Hey everyone, thanks for popping in. We're just going to wait another minute or so to let people join. Yeah, everyone's coming in. Great. Okay, people are trickling in. I'm sure they'll continue to do so, but it is 12 Central Time. It's much later for our speaker. I'll introduce her. And so we're going to get started. Just so everyone knows, if you do have questions throughout the webinar today, it'd be great if you drop that in the Q&A or chat, and I can monitor that, and we're going to take time for questions at the end. So we do want to get started on time, so we have time to answer any questions that you might have. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce our speaker. Some of you may know her, Annie Skidmore. She is an adult with PKU, an athlete. She has a background in sports science, and she's now undertaking something that many of us will never do. She's undertaking a PhD in the area of sports science to help investigate its connection and in relation to PKU. So we're super excited to learn from Annie today. And yeah, without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Annie.
Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, welcome everyone. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. So today I'm going to be covering physical activity, exercise, sport, and nutrition with phenylketonuria or PKU. So firstly, just to introduce myself then. So my background, as Sarah mentioned, is in sport and exercise science. So I completed my undergrad and master's degree in Newcastle University. And now I am a PhD researcher at Birmingham City University in England in the UK. As Sarah mentioned, I am a classical PKU patient and also an athlete with PKU. So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit about me, but delving a little bit more deeper in a second. So currently I'm on 30 grams of protein with Sapropterin or Kuvan, you may know it as. So yeah, so that's kind of me in summary. But just kind of going through my journey really. So what I've really experienced with PKU and specifically focusing on the sport side of things. So during school, I had a really supportive school in terms of PKU, in terms of like the meals that I had. So we had like school dinners. So it was a case of like I had those and like everyone kind of knew about PKU. And that's kind of where my sport journey started really. So I got involved with athletics throughout high school and I was competing in school, but also for the local club really as well, and doing that. And that's the picture there. So I was competing in the summer months. It was sort of training every day, at least once, and then competitions with school and outside of school. And at this point, I was on 14 grams of protein. So this was before Kuvan, and again, this posed its own challenges, which I will come on to. But yeah, so that was kind of, I was training, as I said, quite a lot. I was trying to fuel as much as I can, a growing teenager, trying to fuel through that. So that kind of led me up to college, where I kind of dropped off with the athletics and I picked up golf actually, so different sport entirely. And I also had the opportunity to go abroad with my volunteering in sports leaders, like an additional qualification that I did. And I volunteered abroad for 3 weeks. So that again posed different challenges in terms of managing PKU, traveling, but also having that sport element as well. So from college onwards, I then went to university, and during this time picked up training at the gym. I also then kind of fell back into running, but more of the long distance type of thing, which is crazy to think back then. So yeah, during COVID, picked up that and then completed my first half marathon. And then off the back of that, I joined the cross country and athletics team and had the opportunity to go warm weather training, which you can see at the bottom there. And then I've carried that on ever since. Um, and yeah, been part of the team in my masters as well, and competing again a different type of management with PKU, the longer distance, fueling for that, completely different really. And then after my studies, I then went into work and had, over a year in clinic before I then went traveling. So that's a little bit more about my journey. And touching upon that, so some of my experiences with PKU. So as I say, I mentioned I went traveling. So traveling is something I've always loved to do. Throughout childhood, we went abroad, and that was never really seen as a barrier. It just was a lot of pre-planning, a lot of time going through that. So lucky enough to go. I've been to the States. Some of you might be familiar with Camp Fever in the top right there. So I managed to do that in when I was working in clinic and went over there for a year, which was amazing to meet the PK community in the States. That was brilliant. I've been to Australia more recently, and that was a solo 6 week traveling. So again, poses difficulties and challenges, but it was a brilliant experience. You may recognise a couple of people in there. So I met three others with PKU, three adults with PKU in different places. So the bottom there, you can see myself and Tiana on New Year's Eve having a PKU meal and a protein substitute. We've got Bianca and Georgie there. We've done a coastal walk. So again, it was brilliant to connect with those in different countries as well. Alongside all this, did keep up my training. So yeah, we've got Birmingham 10K there. We've got the NSPKU fundraiser. So again, still quite active, surfing, paddleboarding, etc. So a bit of everything, and got experiences with that. Another, just briefly mention this story. I think it's quite a funny one, really. But the birthday cake at the top, you might wonder why that's in there. For my 22nd birthday, I believe, I went and visited my auntie in France, and unbeknown to me, my mum had sent low protein flour in the post to my auntie, and this was their local restaurant that actually made a low protein cake in France. So somehow that got through customs, but yeah, so that was just another little funny story there. But yeah, ultimately, I couldn't be where I am without the support of my family. So yeah, it's taken a bit of a team to get where I am today, but that's just a little bit about me. In terms of life as a PKU athlete, again, big thing, food is fuel. So I mentioned before, I was on 12 grams of protein, slightly increased to 14 when I was in university. Then I went on the Soprotrin trial a couple of years ago and responded to that, which was not expected. So now I'm on 30 grams of protein. Did drop off a little bit when I moved on to GMP, but now I'm actually back onto amino acid based supplements and on 30 grams of protein. So yeah, it's definitely a bit of a learning curve. I've learned a lot over the years. Trial and error has been a big thing, but hopefully I can shed a bit of light over that today. So how I became a PhD researcher then. So as I mentioned before, I was in my clinic role, and I knew that the frustrations that I'd had sort of growing up with PKU in terms of my training. So training, as I say, some days it was nearly every day, sometimes it was twice in a day. It was quite a lot, especially growing up, you're growing, you've got, GCSEs or exams with school. Um, so yeah, it was kind of after every training session, I'd feel very fatigued. I would just want to sleep. My mum was like, you need to eat something. Um, and yeah, I always felt like I had recovering slower, longer, and just kind of had a bit of yeah, went sort of a block really. And then when going to clinic, it was I wasn't kind of having any answers to the questions I was asking, like, is there something better to fuel on, rather than just like a fizzy drink? And yeah, it just kind of built up from there, really. So I always knew that there was some sort of research I'd like to do, but I didn't really know how, when to sort of to do that. I actually found this PhD myself by just kind of proposing the idea. It wasn't something that was advertised, and I kind of looked for funding and a university that would support it. So yeah, it wasn't an overnight thing. It was kind of a couple of years of researching and actually, am I wanting to do this? What am I wanting to do it on? And yeah, this is ultimately how I decided that I would start a PhD in PKU and try and find this information out because as I say, despite being on more protein, I still felt this fatigue. I still felt there was challenges. There was not much information out there, nutritional support wise, and just kind of wanted more answers really. So that's kind of how it's led me to where I am today. So touching on the PKU Sport project, so some of you may have seen this before, but it's just kind of to outline what our aims and objectives are with the project. We wanted to create something that um, would be applicable to everybody, and we really wanted to focus on what were our end goals and how are we going to get there. So a couple of things, as I say, we made this acronym to help it be more recognizable and everyone kind of knew where we were going with it. And if we kind of deviated, we just went back to this and think, right, where are we going with it? So the key one of the key ones is organizing a whole systems approach. So we wanted everyone in the research to have a voice. So whether this was patients, caregivers, stakeholders, clinicians, industry, and we wanted everyone to sort of work together to help sort of raise awareness and voice any concerns and have an input into the research. Again, it was supporting everybody involved to ultimately help provide guidelines with nutrition and exercise in PKU and tailor these approaches based on the findings to individuals. So we wanted, it's not necessarily, one size fits all. Everyone with PKU is slightly different tolerances, slightly different genetics, preferences, etc. So it's been able to tailor what we find to each person and suit their needs really. And then in general, just raising awareness of the role of nutrition and exercise. It is something that's not really in the past been touched upon. It is becoming more talked about and more people are aware of it and wanting to make health changes. So yeah, it's just providing both any potential positive and negative effects of management of PKU around this as well. So just to introduce the team. So my main supervisor is Dr. Lewis Goff. He's an associate professor in nutrition and physiology. He's done a lot of work with elite cycling, supplementation, Olympic cyclists, but he's also done a lot in metabolism and fatigue. So looking at long COVID, chronic conditions, and things like post-exercise malaise, etc. So he's got very good knowledge background. We've also got Professor Anita MacDonald, who some of you may be familiar with, the consultant dietitian at Birmingham Children's Hospital. So she's on the team as well, along with Dr. Adam Herbert and Professor Kira Lewis from BCU. And everyone has their own different area of expertise, which is really great in terms of the research and providing input. And as I say, they were Lewis's main interests. So we've got a really good supportive team. So getting to more of what we're studying really. So this is a bit of an overview. So I'm now in my second year. So year one, we've established the baseline activity levels and nutritional intake of those with PKU and the barriers and facilitators from all the stakeholders. So your patients, caregivers, industry and clinicians. So I'm currently going through that. And in year two, we're now looking to investigate the Phi response to different exercises and the intensities of those. How can optimize nutrition for beneficial performance and recovery, and lastly to investigate the protein substitute response and changing the timing of those for measuring things like fatigue, exercise, symptom trackers, etc. So that's a bit of an overview. So as I say, the end goal, we wanted, as I say, all stakeholders to be working together We want to work towards more specific guidelines for PKU individuals in general, and being able to have more awareness of the role of exercise and nutrition in PKU, yeah, is our ultimate end goal, really. So moving on to study one. So the aim of study one was to investigate and identify physical activity, exercise and nutrition and sporting behaviours in PKU patients and explore the experiences of healthcare. So some of you may be aware, this was the surveys that some of you may have filled out. So 48 item online survey. So this was with patients who were over 16 or caregivers of children those under 16 completed this. There was various areas explored, so PKU management, physical activity, exercise, sport, support, etc. And this was completed globally, so from the UK to the States to Australia and Europe as well. It was launched at the National Society for Phenylketonuria Conference in 2024. It was promoted on their social media, through their website, in their news and views type article. It was promoted on PKU events and social media as well. So it had a vast reach. Initially, we had a target of 100 responses for this, and a control survey was also collected from non-PKU adults as well. And we obtained ethics. So I'm not going to share with you the whole of the results, just a few areas. So we had a really, really excellent response rate. So we had 214 responses from PKU individuals or caregivers. And we had a control group of 152 responses as well. So there were various, as I said, there's various areas explored, 48 questions, so there isn't time to go through it all today. But common themes included fatigue, there was poor recovery, hunger and low energy, muscle soreness, and tolerance with low protein foods and protein substitutes were all reported in sort of the answers to some of the questions. So it really was helped us sort of unpick these results to then develop the next few studies based on these. And in comparison to the controls as well, it is really yeah, it's really impactful to see the difference. And again, these will come out when they're fully published. But yeah, just a bit of a summary of those results. Then study two. So we also have completed study two. So this was the barriers, facilitators and solutions for patients with PKU performing physical activity and exercise from various different stakeholder perspectives. So for this one, we held a mixture of 13 online and in-person semi-structured focus groups. So, as I say, we explored the barriers, facilitators and solutions. So why people engaged in activity, why people were less likely to, and what sort of solutions or how would we go about to try and increase the engagement in physical activity and exercise. There were roughly about 45 minutes to an hour each, with 2 to 12 participants per focus group. And again, we're seeing ethics was obtained. So in terms of the results for these, so we had a total of 75 participants across the different stakeholders, which was really brilliant to see. So thank you to anyone got involved in those. So there were 5 main themes. Again, this is all unpublished data, so just to be aware of. So firstly, we've got the physical effects of PKU, the psychological effects of PKU, support, knowledge and management of PKU, and opportunities. So these led, all these themes collectively impacted in terms of reducing physical activity in patients, and it was negatively impacted on levels of self-confidence and anxiety levels, and importantly, there was misalignment between stakeholders, which was interesting to see, the different viewpoints and experiences that, say, clinicians may have versus patients, and vice versa with other different stakeholders. So again, a more in-depth results will be coming out, but that's just a little bit of a taster of what we found out, and as I say, led to the development of the next few studies, and yeah, just poses some areas of thinking as well. Oh. So looking towards the future then, so I've mentioned those are the first two studies that we have done. The next, so study 3 and 4, we are in the process of ethical approval. So we are waiting for that. Once that comes through, we'll be then starting that off. It will be open. We're open to generate interest, however, now. So as I say, we will discuss that later, but it'll be great to hear from you, especially for study 3, because this is open worldwide. So we'll be able to capture people in the States and in other countries as well. And it is more looking at things like the Phi response to exercise. It is looking at symptom trackers. It is looking at the holistic view, but then also looking at your lab experimental type data, investigating things like fatigue, muscle soreness, recovery in the lab at the Alexander Stadium with all the testing and sports science equipment. So it's exciting, the next few studies, but it is really fundamental that we had those first two studies to help inform what were the challenges, what are people wanting to know, how are we going to go about that. So yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment. But look into a bit more of practical application then. So in the meantime, this is going to take, another couple of years for me to get the data for it to be published. But in the meantime, what can you be doing practically to then help inform your activity, your exercise, and overall management of PKU? So I'm going to touch upon that now. So we've got physical activity. So this is defined as any type of bodily movement. So things such as like, a light walk, it could be housework, it could be gardening, anything, just kind of movement in general. It's like your umbrella term. And then within that, you've got things like exercise and sport. So in terms of exercise, so this is structured physical activity. So this could be things like going on a run, it could be climbing, it could be swimming, it could be going to the gym and doing a weight session. Anything like that is more your exercise. And then obviously sport is more the competitive type of thing. In the UK, we use the World Health Organization guidelines for physical activity and exercise. However, a large percent, so over 60%, people aren't meeting these guidelines, especially things like the strength training in adults. So it's really important that we sort of raise awareness of physical activity and exercise because we know the benefits of it. In the general population, we know the benefits of physical activity and exercise. So yeah, it's just to help distinguish between the two. So physical activity and exercise with PKU then. So there is minimal experimental research. Some of you may be aware, there's not a lot out there in terms of exercise testing with PKU. So again, it's raising that awareness, getting more research out there so we can, manage PKU better in general. There is no specific guidelines on sort of specifics with PKU management in terms of exercise. So whether things like different types of exercise produces a different Phi response. So whether, endurance type exercise versus strength training. And again, the appropriate response is just unknown at the moment. As well, the chronic effects of exercise are unknown. So if you're repeatedly doing exercise, what does this do long term? Are there any benefits? Are there any struggles? Again, that is unaware at the moment. Research has shown that long-term health is important to patients with PKU. Long-term health will be facilitated by engaging in regular physical activity and exercise. So again, it is an unmet need that the population is discussing. And again, the influence of physical activity and exercise on things like your energy levels, different comorbidities that may be associated with PKU needs further study. So in terms of general nutrition then, so many of you may have seen this before, it's your Eat Well guide. In the UK, the Public Health England produced this to help proportion and keep sort of a healthy balanced diet. Again, some of it can be useful with PKU in terms of the fruit and veg, the processed food type thing. But again, this is largely based for non-PKU individuals. However, some aspects you will be able to take away from that. So general nutrition with PKU then. So protein substitutes, these are obviously a massive part of our diet. Mainly split into sort of at least 3 equal doses throughout the day. I've put a glass of water on there. It is encouraged that you drink water alongside this due to the high content of them, a high osmolality content of them. So again, it's just to prevent any like GI discomfort, etc. So sticking to your protein substitutes, spacing them out during the day, making sure you're drinking them all. And again, this is essential for your Phe levels, compliance, making sure you're getting all your vitamins and minerals, etc. 5 a day, so like the general population, 5 a day is very important. With PKU, I'm pretty sure a lot of us will be managing this, seeing as fruit and veg is very low in Phe. But again, it's just to reiterate, 5 a day, it helps, the vitamins, minerals, recovery, all things like that. So again, that's really important. And then you've got your special low protein prescription foods, which help provide the energy and the calories to our diet, keep us full, keep the Phe levels down. And again, that's just your general nutrition with PKU. A lot of it you might be aware of, but it's just to reinforce it. So, in terms of exercise, then, this might look a lot, but I'll break it down. So, this is for your non PKU athlete. So, and again, I'll touch upon why, because as I said, we haven't got any recommendations for PKU specifically. So again, it's using these and adapting them. So for example, your non-PKU athlete would be having between 1.4 to 2 grams a kilogram of protein a day. So this will look for about, as I say, for different people, it'll look a different thing. But again, for PKU athletes, this would be using your protein substitute. So you'd be getting the most of your protein from your protein substitute. As you can see here, it is recommended for non-PKU athlete every 3 to 4 hours to be having 20 to 30 grams of protein a day with 20 to 40 post-exercise. So this is why having your protein substitute after exercise is encouraged. This is when your muscles are sort of regenerating the most. So getting that protein substitute in after exercise within about 30 minutes will be really beneficial. It also gives you a bit of food for thought in terms of protein requirements for those that are PKU athletes and potential scope for increasing protein substitute based on the recommendations for non-PKU athlete, especially considering the potential the protein is synthetic, it isn't necessarily the same. Absorption may be questioned. Again, these are all hypothetical because we've not got concrete evidence for increasing protein intake. However, it is definitely something that could be done, especially those who are resistance trained. The more, as I say, the more you're training, so for example, 2.3 to 3.1 grams for resistance trained individuals. So again, it's just being able to look at that and then also look at the PKU individual. But your main intake from the protein will be your substitute. This is why it's really important to take them. Looking at carbohydrates, so again, really important for energy. So mainly this will be coming from your low protein special foods, prescription foods, items. And again, this becomes of real importance for those endurance athletes. So myself, I am aware of how much carbohydrates I'll be need to eat on a day where I'm doing a long run, for instance. If it's a race day, if it's a half marathon, it's a lot of carbohydrates. So for instance, if you are exercising for over an hour period, you need to be replenishing these carbohydrate stores. You will be depleted and you will feel rubbish if you are not having anything after an hour. So 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So 30 grams of dates, which is about a portion, is equivalent to 25 grams of carbohydrates. A banana is about 25 grams of carbohydrates. So if you're having both of those for just over an hour, you might be there or thereabouts. Or equally, sweets are a great option, especially when you're running. You might not be able to eat a banana whilst you're running. I definitely can't. So things like jelly sweets, things like dates, energy gels potentially. I just prefer going for the food approach. Are really important. If you don't have the carbohydrates, you'll feel even worse. Your Phe levels will rise because you're not having the carbohydrates. You'll go into catabolism. So again, it's really important if you're exercising over an hour to feel that, but then also refuel afterwards. So fat intake, Again, this is for athletes, it's similar to non-athletes. This is the non-PKU population again. And again, there I'd say it's a similar intake. Hydration needs, so these are very individual. Some people may need more than others. It is especially challenging during endurance exercise, being able to drink whilst you're running, especially if it's a warm day. I can appreciate in America it's probably a lot warmer than in England. So it is really important to keep your hydration in there. Just to give you an example as well from myself, I underestimated hydration. I suffered a lot with headaches post exercise, especially after a long run. And it wasn't until my dietitian mentioned, are you having any electrolytes? Are you having any salt afterwards? I was like, no, you are sweating out you're sweating out salt, etc. You need to replace those. So since I have electrolytes, and this is just this particular example that is PKU friendly. So again, it's just being able to get the basics right is kind of where I'm coming from that. You know, making sure you're fueling before, during, after, your hydration, etc. Is really important. So moving on to supplements. So again, these can be beneficial for non-PKU athletes. Again, minimal research, if anything, into PKU. But again, they can potentially help minimize some of the effects in terms of recovery, reducing muscle soreness, etc., increasing performance. But as I say, there isn't specifics done into PKU, but what you can do is sort of, use the research that has been done. Again, it can help things like reducing inflammation, which has been associated with PKU and is associated with exercise, so reducing that inflammation response. So again, it's further work is needed into supplements, but again, always discuss sort of with your dietitian in terms of that. So yeah, that's in terms of your non-PKU. But with PKU, again, just to give you a bit more practical advice with that. So as I mentioned before, protein substitutes are vital. So having these post-exercise within 30 minutes is generally advised. Having this with a carbohydrate source, so for example, a banana, will help that protein synthesis response, so regenerating the muscle. And then spreading these out and consuming every 3 to 4 hours is better than sort of having it at the start and at the end of the day, or saving it all to the end of the day. And it again helps keep those Phe levels stable. If you are able to have more protein, if you are on Soprotrin or any other treatment, things like a high quality protein source after exercise, so things like just a few examples there, so soy yogurt, you might be able to have eggs, milk, pulses, again, can be really beneficial immediately after exercise. I mentioned as well before about increasing the protein substitute. Again, discuss this with your dietitian, but from my own personal experience, I have had to increase my protein substitute more than what might be sort of advised generally. I know the 60 grams is kind of where it's at, but recently I've actually increased. I'm now on so I'm on 100 grams of protein substitute just to match the demands of my exercise and keep my Phe levels where I like them. So again, it is very tailored, coming back to the start of what I said about the goals of our research. It's having the information, but being able to tailor that to each patient. Every patient's different, different goals, different makeup, etc. So it's just important to, discuss all the options really. As I say, in terms of carbohydrates and fat, there's no specific recommendations in terms of evidence. But again, using the information that I mentioned previously for non-PKU athletes, using that and then monitoring things like your Phe levels. How are you feeling? Are you feeling really tired? Are you needing some more carbohydrates maybe after exercise? Are you eating enough before? Are you having something if it's over an hour? And adjusting this accordingly. I think what I've learned over the past year, especially, is that it has to be tailored. It has to be to that person, and the more monitoring that you do, the more you've got an idea of what's going on, and that helps inform your PKU management, and ultimately, yeah, being able to engage in physical activity and exercise, but keep your Phe levels under control. Again, a really, really important one is meal frequency and calories. So I touched on this slightly, but regularly consuming food, as I say, helps stabilize the Phe levels. If you are doing things that are long duration of exercise, or you're just not fueling that performance, it will spike your Phe levels. You know, if you're not getting the calories in, if you're not um, sort of pre-planning, if you've got a competition, if you've got an event, if you've got a training session, if you're going for a run, if you're going for a walk, if you're not meeting your calorie intake, you will then start breaking down your own protein, which in turn will increase your Phe. So it's really important to sort of, little and often regular consumption of food will definitely prevent you sort of feeling really fatigued and having them low energy periods. Especially as I say in endurance exercise, this is heavily reliant on carbohydrates, so you need to be able to fuel and refuel, especially if you're doing, an exercise bout the next day, or you've got a high energy day the next day. It's really important to keep um, keep eating and getting the calories in to support that as well. Um, yeah, other considerations as well. So I've mentioned a varied and balanced diet. So this is really important. You want to make sure you're getting all the vitamins and minerals in. You want to make sure that you're not picking up any illnesses. Um, you want to just kind of make sure you're kind of getting the basics right. I think that's a key message. Get the basics right as you can, making sure you're hydrated, you're eating enough, it's balanced. If you get the basics right, you're 90% there. In terms of other things, so monitoring your full blood levels as well, this can be an indication if you've got any deficiencies. So it's just really important to make sure you go into them clinic appointments, getting everything checked, doing your weekly, monthly, 2 weekly, however often you do your blood spots, um, to check how everything's going, especially if you've maybe just recently started, I don't know, going to the gym, or if you started going swimming, you maybe done something different and you just want to make sure that everything is managed accordingly, really. And again, consuming all your protein substitute is really, really important, especially for recovery. And what I found as well, I have one just before bed as well. So I'm having that recovery and that protein overnight as well. So I know that's a lot of information, but just kind of to condense it a little bit. So things to consider. So we've mentioned the type of activity. So is it resistance training? Is it using weights? Is it, running? Is it endurance based? What is your source of energy? Is it that you need to be having your protein substitute after, etc.? So the duration of the activity. So is it longer than an hour? Is it less than an hour? Just so that it can help inform your management around that. So your overall goals. So is it performance? Is it weight loss? Is it strength gain? Discussing your goals, especially with your dietitian, will then be able to help manage your PKU. Are you maybe needing more protein substitute? Are you maybe needing more exchanges? Are you needing more calories? If they know your goals, then you'll be able to discuss this as well. Logistical challenges. So I can appreciate, I know there's a lot of pre-planning in PKU. It might be things like you've got sports, you've maybe got sports at school, but then afterwards you're playing hockey or something, and you're thinking, actually, yeah, technically I've got 2 sessions in a day there. How am I going to fuel for that? Do I need to take a snack with me? Is there going to be something there that I can have? I need to pack something, etc. Or it might be like myself, got a half marathon on Sunday. How am I going to fuel for that? How am I going to feel before? I need to take things with me. And it's just kind of that pre-planning that reduces that maybe sort of extra maybe anxiety that you're feeling about if there wasn't anything you could eat. And it just helps that if you've got it there, you might not need it, but at least you've got it. And again, ultimately, that helps keep your Phe levels under control. It means that you'll be able to, have less likely to be fatigued and be able to do a next exercise session. I mentioned how important hydration is. Again, coming up to the summer months, this is really important. Getting the electrolytes in. When you sweat, you lose salt, so it's really important to refuel that, obviously with suitable electrolytes. Again, nutrition, large one. So as I say, pre-fueling. If you have got a big event coming up, if you've got a half marathon, if you've got a long day of activities, if you've got a day competition, whatever that may be, if you're going for a hike, you know, making sure that you're fueling. It might be a few days before. For myself, I prefer to do it a couple more days rather than overloading the day before. Just trying to do it maybe 3 days to help increase those carbohydrates. Again, during and post exercise as well. Protein substitutes, we've mentioned a lot. So again, timing of those, the amount of those, being able to tailor that to your daily routine, your exercise demands, etc. Your dietary protein intake, and again, just spacing that out, maybe having a little bit more after exercise, and saving your exchanges for those. And again, some other things. So I mentioned about getting the basics right. So recovery. So sleep is a big one. Making sure you get enough sleep. You're not going to be able to perform well if you don't have enough sleep. Your body is, that's how it kind of regenerates, it recovers. So sleep's a big one. Different relaxation techniques might be things like muscle recovery type things, etc. Anything like that. So again, it's just an overview. There's many things to consider, but it'll be really beneficial to sort of address each one. So looking to the future, so future research, we've mentioned it, should be really tailored advice. Generally more awareness of physical activity, exercise and nutrition in PKU management. So working with different stakeholders, so working with your clinicians, with industry, coming up together with a solution, and having that open conversation and open mindedness when it terms of nutrition and tailoring things and changing things, trial and error. You learn from mistakes, you learn from getting things right, etc. And ultimately, providing PKU specific guidelines. This will help support patients, caregivers, it'll support clinicians being able to manage and give advice, and generally just more knowledge in general. So last few bits, so key takeaways. So we've mentioned prioritizing fueling around exercise, how important this is, pre-exercise, during and post. Carbohydrates and calories are essential for energy, the restoration process, and ultimately keeping your Phe levels under control. Considering the timing of your protein substitute, so after exercise, pre-sleep, just for example. Considering the type and duration of your activity, so is it longer than an hour? Is it strength-based? Is it endurance? Regular blood monitoring for clarity, what your Phe levels are doing around exercise. The healthy habits, so as I say, getting the basics right, your sleep, relaxation. But ultimately, always consult your dietitian or metabolic team first. Again, they know you, they know your diet, they know how you work, but it's having that relationship to discuss these options. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, and yeah, if you feel free to get involved, email me, message me, etc. And the podcast will also be released on Wednesday, so there's a bit more information on that. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Annie. That was so great. We have, since we're in a the standard webinar, we know that the participant can't unmute and ask questions, but please drop questions, comments, anything for Annie into the chat and the Q&A. Okay, Veronica says, hi, awesome presentation. Do you have any advice or knowledge around PKU, low energy symptoms and REDs?
Yeah, so I think low energy in generally, it's making sure you're getting enough, like as I say, carbohydrates, calories. So having things like low protein pasta for lunch, having low protein snacks, making sure you're having these after exercise as well, but also not just like one meal. You might have a meal, you might need to have another snack a couple of hours later. Making sure you're getting the calories in there. Carbohydrates and fats definitely will definitely help with that. So yeah, maybe relying more on your low protein options, bulking up those meals, having the extra snacks, will definitely help with that. Hope that helps.
Thanks. And another participant wondering your thoughts on branched chain amino acids for PKU athletes, if you have any.
Yeah. Again, I can't really give specific advice in terms of that. Personally, I'd just use your protein substitutes. I have no experience using them. It's not something I'd use. From the research, you're better just going with, a food first approach. So having your protein substitutes, having the food. Yeah, there's not that much benefit in terms, yeah, definitely stick to your protein substitutes with that. Um, yeah, rather than going too complex. Yeah.
Anyone else have a question or comment? Well, Annie, I'm super excited to see where you and your research goes next. I had seen some of your initial surveys, but to hear your future direction is super exciting. We have another question here. How can PKU people help with research or other applications? So yeah, maybe some specific
Yeah.
action items
Yeah,
there.
so definitely getting involved, whether you want to get involved yourself or just sharing it, is really helpful. So the next study, as I mentioned before, is going to be open to worldwide participation for over 16s. So again, getting involved with that, you can email me if you're interested or want further information. But it will be, yeah, fully remote, so you'll be able to do it, monitor things. You don't have to come to England or anything like that. So anyone can get involved with that, and they don't have to be active to take part. Is another note. You don't have to be doing anything. You can be doing loads. There's no obligation in terms of that. It's essentially just observing what people are doing, how people are feeling, um, and yeah, just kind of having that. But if you email me, I can give you some more information about that. But yeah, sharing it, telling other people about it, just getting the word out, is definitely really helpful. And again, it just raises that awareness of the topic as well. You might not want to take part in it. You might know someone that does. You might just want to share it or read about it. But yeah, the more people that know about it, yeah, the more interest and the more impact it will have at the end if there's more people involved.
I have a few more questions. Is there anything from your research on activity that also discusses the trials and then tips for those with PKU that addresses weight loss goals when increasing exercise goals? And
Okay, yes. So in terms of the trials, I'm assuming the meaning like treatments.
ask for clarification if if you want.
Yeah.
Do you mean trials like the challenges with weight loss, or do you mean actual research trials? If that attendee wants to clarify. And then in the meantime, while we wait for that, another attendee was wondering if you know when you expect your work to be published, maybe from the first two studies.
Yeah. Touch woods. By the end of the year, the first study one and study two will be published. Fingers crossed. Yeah. So I'm currently writing them up at the moment. So I'm hoping by the end of the year they'll be fully published.
And then yes, back to the weight loss questions. What they meant by trials is just the challenges with weight loss. So it discusses kind of the challenges and then tips to counteract those challenges for weight
Yeah.
loss, increasing exercise.
Um, so with weight loss, it's um more beneficial to do it slower with PKU. So if you have drastic reductions in your energy intake, so what you're eating during the day, you will end up spiking your phe levels. So you will end up breaking down your muscle protein and your phe levels will rise. So it will be a longer process than your non-PKU individual, frustratingly, but ultimately with weight loss, it is about, with PKU, sorry, it's about reducing calories slowly. So, for instance, maybe 50 to 100 calories, not going like 500 calories straight away because ultimately your phe levels will be spiked. It's a bit like how if you're exercising and you don't eat enough, it's the same sort of response. So slow and steady with it. Things, making sure you're having your protein substitute because that ultimately acts as your protein, so it'll keep you full. So you may discuss with your dietitian about increasing that. Again, that's up to them. But if you are a non-PKU individual, you would focus on increasing your protein because that's what keeps you full. So just as an observation, as a PKU patient, you might look to increase your protein substitute. But again, that's something to discuss with your dietitian. Having things that are high in fiber, so having things like, fruit, veg, bulking up your meals with high fiber food, low protein food, like natural protein, sorry. So things like, say, your fruit, your veg, salad, bulking that up. So you've got high volume of food. Um, and also in terms of your keeping your fee levels stable, having like maybe smaller but regular meal times, so you're not going a prolonged period without food, um, but maybe just reducing that portion size, for instance. But as I say, frustratingly, it's better to do it slower, reducing the calories slowly. Otherwise, yeah, you will have those spikes in Phi, which will have other consequences as well. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, definitely just maybe discuss with your dietitian as well. They'll be able to sort of tailor a bit more to you as well.
So if someone wondering if you have a food or snack list for options that are high in calorie, low in protein, just ideas for active athletes, either things that you personally rely on, or if you have some sort of list that you could share.
Yeah, so I think for myself it has changed over the years because my tolerance has changed, but definitely when I was younger, things like sports drinks, I know they are potentially high in sugar, but if you're doing a lot, you need to have things like maybe a suitable fizzy drink. It could be a glass of apple juice. It could be anything like that. In terms of, yeah, high calorie things, so things like cooking with olive oil, that's got calories in it. It's a great way to get things in. Things like low protein pastas, quite calorific. So again, getting the carbohydrates in through that. I used to have, I still do as well, sometimes have like low protein pasta and things. Breads, so things like jam on toast, great. Like if you're going pre-run and you want something fast carbs, you don't want things that are high in fiber, you don't want slow release, you want something fast. So you've got, jam on low protein toast, just banana with that, and a glass of like apple juice or something. Um, yeah, things, as I say, fruit and veg is great, but it's not that calorific. So I say sometimes, as I say, it's a case of having sweets to refuel, especially during exercise. Cereal bars used to be my kind of go-to when I was younger. Again, checking the protein content of those. Could be things like fruit bars, low protein bars. It could be anything like that, really. Yeah, I think things like sweet potato, again, is really great, whether that's like fries, mash, whatever that may be. Um, yeah, things like that. So things that are high in carbohydrates, but then also you need to fast carbohydrates, so things that are released quite quickly. So things like, jam's great, example. Things like avocado is really great. Um, yeah, anything like that. Low protein cheese, vegan cheese. Hopefully that
Great.
helps.
This next question, I'm guessing it's another area that probably the research is lacking, but questions about sex differences that are noteworthy for energy, menstrual cycles, for example, exercise in general, sex differences for exercise in general that PKU people can consider.
Yeah, so yeah, like you mentioned, there isn't much research, if any, out there in terms of sex differences. Again, it's something to explore. You in the focus groups, for instance, in study two, we noticed that there was a higher number of females that signed up than males. Um, Again, it's just another area that needs probably more research. We will be monitoring things like the menstrual cycle. So within study three and four, we will have a symptom diary. So it will be a symptom tracker. So it'll cover things like menstrual cycle, sleep, if you've had all your protein substitute, if you've had your exchanges, your grams of protein a day, um, other sort of areas of well-being, quality of life, mental health, cognitive function. So we will be doing that on the side. It won't be the main focus of the research, because that can be another PhD in itself. But I appreciate that does need considering. So we have tried to sort of tailor it to the next two studies. But yeah, it is something to definitely that needs more research in terms of the menstrual cycle and sex differences as well.
We had a question about bananas specifically, I think, because you've mentioned bananas a few times, just what makes it better, what makes bananas better than other fruits? You mentioned carbohydrate content.
Yeah, they're a good source of carbohydrates. I mean, apples are great as well. It's just something that's sometimes convenient. Personally, I don't actually like bananas, so I don't know why I use that example. I'd use an apple. But yeah, it's just they can be quick to take with you. So any sort of fruit like that, yeah, it's just a good source of carbohydrates. Just an example. There are other fruits out there that you can have that are good carbohydrates, but bananas, apples, that type of thing. Things like dried fruit, things like, as I say, fast release. So you might have jam on toast, you might have jam on low protein crackers. Yeah, low protein. alternatives, which can be really good carbohydrate sources, but those that, obviously you might want to take in your bag when you're out at a competition or you're out training, and things like that can be really helpful.
Great. And then we just, had a comment just says, thanks for your answers, very helpful. Thank you for your research that you've inspired this individual. And they, they know so many other PKUers in their state as well. So just thanks
Oh,
so
thank you. Thank you, everyone. It
much.
really helps, as I say, like the support as well, and like you sharing it and everything. Yeah, it's great that it is something that everyone's keen to get involved with as well. So thank you.
If there are no more questions, we can end it on that note. Just so everyone knows, if you attended and you want to watch it again, we have a recording. It will be posted to our YouTube, and for those who missed it too, that will be posted and shared. And I just wanted to say thanks again to Annie. This was really informative and just a great piece of information today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you all. I think we can just sign off, Annie. I think it's
Yeah, I
easiest.
was trying to figure out.
There you go. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, Annie. That was wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. No
Have
problem. Thank you.
a great day over there.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye.